It was one of those brutal nights history barely bothers to remember, the kind of cold that slips through wool, bites the fingertips, and makes a soldier whisper prayers into the dark. During the Second World War, men from every corner of the world found themselves fighting two enemies, the one armed with rifles and the one that came howling through the trees. In the frozen forests of Europe, on the jagged cliffs of Italy, and across the vast, unforgiving steppes of Russia. Too cold didn't he? Just slow armies had claimed them. Rifles froze solid, boots stiffened into boards, and medics treated frostbite almost as often as bullet wounds. In places like the Ardennes in 1944, men woke to find their canteens frozen, their breath turned to ice, and sometimes their closest friends gone before dawn. But in that relentless winter, when supplies failed, when sleeping bags were rare or frozen stiff as wood, soldiers so light and Axis alike turned to a survival trick older than any army manual. It wasn't issued in a crate. It wasn't stamped with government markings. It came directly from the human body, a technique so simple and so effective that it quietly saved thousands of lives: sharing body heat. The British jokingly called it the two-man trench bivvy, but there was nothing humorous about it when the temperature fell low enough to stop a heartbeat. It wasn't about comfort, it was about staying alive for one more night. The method was crude, but astonishingly effective. Two, sometimes even three soldiers would remove their wet outer layers, because everyone knew cold trapped inside clothing was deadlier than the cold outside it. Then they'd lie shoulder to shoulder, chest to back, side by side. Anything to close the gaps where he'd escaped. One poncho, one wool blanket, a ground sheet, whatever they had would go over all of them, turning that narrow space into a tiny pocket of warm air, a microclimate. Their combined heat could raise the temperature by several life-saving degrees. In snowbound forests, they dug shallow, trenchy snow coffins. Some called them lined the bottom with pine boughs, and crawled beneath the white layers like human furnaces. And it worked night after night. It worked. Soviet soldiers in Stalingrad used it inside ruined buildings where wind cut through broken concrete. Japanese troops huddled together through jungle nights so humid and cold it felt like steel on skin. Across continents and battle lines, men who had never met, never spoken the same language, discovered the same truth. The body is a heater, and heat shared as heat multiplied. The science behind it is simply your body burns calories to hold itself at around 37 degrees Celsius, and alone in the cold, that heat drains away through the air around you. But place a second warm body beside you, cover both with even a thin barrier, and suddenly the heat loss slows. Each person becomes a reflector for the other. It's the same reason penguins crowd together in blizzards and reindeer cluster on Arctic nights. Nature had solved this long before humans understood it. And even though most World War II soldiers didn't know the physics, they sure understood the results. Less shivering, less fatigue, fewer men carried away with gray skin and silent breath. It became one of the great unspoken rules of cold weather survival. Pride won't keep you warm, but another human being will. This isn't just wartime trivia, it's still used today. Mountain rescue teams share sleeping bags with hypothermia victims. Arctic explorers huddle together when their gear fails. Campers caught in unexpected storms still rely on this ancient technique when the thermometer drops too far, too fast. Because the cold doesn't care about technology. It doesn't care about brand names, temperature ratings, or high-tech linings. It cares only about physics, conduction, convection, radiant heat, and the human body has known how to fight those since long before fabric mills existed. If you ever find yourself stranded in the cold, the lesson is clear. First, build a barrier between yourself and the ground, because the earth will steal your warmth faster than the wind ever could. Pine branches, leaves, a pack, even clothing it, all helps. Second, trap warm air around your body. Use a tarp, a poncho, a jacket, anything that forms a shell. And if you're with someone else, share heat. Chest to back, or see, the tusi. The closer, the better. If you're alone, curl your limbs inward, insulate with whatever you can find, and create layers that hold air instead of crushing it flat. The laws of survival haven't changed since 1944. What made this wartime method so powerful wasn't just that it saved lives. It revealed something deeper about the people who used it. They survived not because they had the best equipment, but because they adapted faster than the cold could kill them. Because when stripped of comfort and steel and strategy, survival becomes something simple, almost ancient knowledge, cooperation, and the willingness to trust another person with your last source of warmth. Today, surrounded by modern gear and endless convenience, it's easy to forget those lessons. But whether you're camping in winter, preparing for emergencies, or simply studying the past, this forgotten technique remains as relevant now as it was during the darkest winter of 1944. The soldiers who shared their body heat weren't just keeping themselves warm. They were proving that human resilience doesn't come from equipment, it comes from creativity, instinct, and the quiet power of being together when the world grows cold. So if this story fascinated you, if you want more forgotten survival tricks, wartime ingenuity, and lessons carved from the harshest moments of history, then subscribe to In the Beginning and share this video with someone who appreciates the old wisdom, because some lessons, especially the ones that saved lives, should never be allowed to fade into the snow.